Climate change is a massive story that can sometimes feel daunting, but some of the winning entries took on that challenge of outlining the big picture and revealing surprising consequences for humans and ecosystems alike. Take a look. Our next winner is a cinematic narrative detailing how rising temperatures don't just melt ice and wither crops. They also invite invasions of disease-carrying mosquitoes. The winner in the features category, How Climate Change is Ushering in a New Pandemic Era, by Jeff Goodell for Rolling Stone magazine.
One of the powerful things that we have to do in journalism is tell the whole story. And I think what Jeff did here is he laid out a problem that maybe very few people outside of science, outside of virologists, outside of science journalism really understood how profoundly frightening it is.
When you start thinking about sea level rise and climate change more broadly, one of the things that you understand very quickly is that it's going to force people to move. The animals that carry diseases we've been fighting for generations, things like mosquitoes and ticks and bats, are also moving. And as those creatures move, they're carrying those diseases with them. The confluence of thinking about migration from sea level rise and the beginnings of COVID really made me think more deeply about the consequences.
A compelling element of the Goodell piece as well is that it gets down to this tiny little organism that we don't necessarily think about when we're thinking about the sort of big macro climate changes.
He catches you right in the beginning. The lead where he describes how a mosquito extracts blood from you, I think was the most meticulous examination of what happens when a mosquito does do that.
First, it spit on Jones's skin to numb it so she wouldn't be alerted to the bite. Then it plunged its syringe-like proboscis, which is actually a sheath containing 6 needles, into Jones's skin. And here is the important part. As it sucked out the blood, the mosquito spit its own saliva into Jones's vein, which contains an anticoagulant that prevents the blood from clotting at the puncture site. In this case, it also contained a virus that caused a tropical disease called dengue fever.
His focus on the ability to connect the viruses that we're seeing, the illnesses that we're seeing, to climate change was very strong and very profound.
I think it's really important as a journalist covering the climate crisis to really try to get the scale of what we're talking about into our stories somehow. That's what I'm trying to do, is bite off a big chunk of the story and really tell as best I can the sort of grand consequences of what we're doing as we heat up the planet.
Another winning entry was 2 years in the making, filmed all across the United States. A CNN team pursued weekly stories while simultaneously building a larger narrative that became our winner in the video TV category. This is Road to Change.
We're committed to about a foot, maybe a foot and a half of sea level rise here.
And by the end of the century, by 2100?
By the end of 2100, it could be anywhere between 3 and 6 feet.
Some of your colleagues, they're predicting 15 feet of sea level rise, which means Miami's gone, right?
Yes, 15 feet is a serious problem.
The CNN piece, The Road to Change, the instant I saw that, I knew it was a classic. It's one of the 2 or 3 best pieces of climate journalism that's ever been done. Bill Weir managed to take you through the entire history of this issue while also humanizing it. Just a brilliant combination of visual storytelling and strong point of view that was never less than factually rigorous.
There was no stopping the Industrial Revolution. Coal and oil transformed humanity, built the modern world, complete with overseas highways. But all that burning also built an invisible greenhouse in the sky.
You guys have won the Covering Climate Now awards.
What? Amazing.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
Wow.
One of the job or the assignment that we were given was to think about the country and the future of when climate change, would arrive here in the US. And so we wanted to try and capture for the public what it might look like here at home. And very quickly, we realized that we didn't have to look into the future and that climate change was, of course, already here and impacting people's lives in a lot of ways.
I'm checking cattle with snow blowing into my face, and I come around the corner and I'm hearing the frogs chirping in a snow blizzard. It was just weird. I'm like, this is what climate change is.
What made this project especially poignant and personal is I had a baby boy just a few weeks before it aired, actually. The first time I saw his face, his little ultrasound face, I went from the doctor's office to interview Greta Thunberg. And so just to think about how he has to think about the world and every sort of staple of food and water and shelter, how those calculations change in this new normal, it made it very, very personal.
Bill Weir is now CNN's chief climate correspondent. Eventually, he says, all journalists on every beat will be climate journalists.
It's politics, geopolitics, it's the economy, it's healthcare, it's food production, it's transportation, it's history, it's psychology. All of that is wrapped into this story, and there's so many layers.